Keegan is here. Mr. Livingston, Tom Livingston is here. Manny Langella, I don't see. And then Kadeem Roberts is here. And I, Lisa Shanahan, I'm the chair and I am here. So our first order of business is the public hearing on chapter 112, which is the new tree ordinance. And so I guess what we'll do is take comments, starting, I guess, with you, Peter. You said that you had something, and then we can see if other attendees want to raise their hand. How about that?
Sure, that's fine with me. You ready?
Yes.
Something quick, like 112.7, altering or damaging trees in city streets. Part D, it talks about trees so severely that it's unlikely to survive. What we're seeing on the city streets is that, and in other places, that people are pruning trees that are inappropriate, and they may be horticulturally accurate. So the tree may not actually survive to its intended purpose, which is to develop a full canopy. And in this statement, it says if the tree is so severely damaged, it may be requested to be replaced. I'd like to sort of address to the wording of the fact that it needs to have an intended growth habit, or that pruning, may not be appropriate for how the tree is desired or going to grow into the future. So it's a small modification to have a broader definition of, when a tree needs to be replaced.
Generally, we don't engage with people who are making public comment, but I'm not sure that I understand the words that you want to change.
Basically, it should involve that trees that are pruned inappropriately so the tree cannot grow to its natural form and habit and intended purpose in its location. And I can type that up and send it to you.
If you can put that in the comments, that'll be great. We'll think of it. We can think to add that. It might come through another time. All right. Are there other people who would like to raise their hands with comments? It looks like Audrey Kazan is on. Who is Anthony? Are you letting people who are attendees make comments?
I am, yes.
I can see her hand is raised.
All right, Audrey, you have the floor.
Yes, hi, Audrey Kozarin. I live at 19 Kendall Court here in Norwalk, and I want to thank the Ordinance Committee. I'm so delighted that you'll be voting tonight to strengthen our tree ordinance, long in coming. And I want to thank our council members Shanahan and Livingston, and also some of the other common council members that I've spoken to about trees and the natural environment over the past year or so: Johnson, Huvelman, Burnett, Smith, Sirenides, and Revolus. It's so important to preserve the existing trees and woodlands here in Norwalk, which have been capturing carbon for a long time. And it would be great to see a process to evaluate trees that are desired to be taken down before they're taken down. That planting small trees, although that's nice, as the science shows, does not fully replace the value of older existing trees. So I'm hoping that this ordinance update will help the city and its residents view trees as assets instead of liabilities and inconveniences. I hope that City of Norwalk can be leaders in restoration and protect habitats and be more cautious about further development projects in Norwalk. A move by the City of Norwalk towards stewardship instead of mere land management can be coupled with encouraging residents to do the same, as well as teaching our school kids more in depth about the natural world. Because there's right now a wealth of knowledge sharing on stewardship practices that benefit trees, I think it would be terrific if we can learn as much as we can right now about learning to appreciate nature, to protect it, and stop fighting against it. So I want to thank you so much for highlighting the natural world through this tree ordinance strengthening. And, without Mother Earth, we have nothing. So terrific work. Keep it going. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Audrey. And then it appears that we have Lawrence next.
Lawrence, you have the floor.
Lawrence, you need to unmute, it looks like. There we go.
Hi, Lisa. I communicated a number of weeks back some specific concerns relative to the definition of legacy trees and what the legacy tree program might look like. And I believe, Lisa, you've seen my email. I have Dominique and a couple of others. That email was written before I had the opportunity to actually read the specific ordinance changes, which I did read through this afternoon, all 14 pages. And, you know, in general, my concern is that legacy trees not be used as a potential vehicle to restrict the private property owner from doing anything to a tree on their property that has been a legacy tree by the tree warden or the tree advisory committee. Yeah, you know, I say this as someone who has a 120-foot Great Eastern White Pine literally sitting 2 feet from the foundation, 225-year-old home. And, you know, at some, it could potentially pose a risk to my house. And some arborists have suggested it does even now. So, you know, my comments are informed by, you know, a real situation at my home. And therefore, you know, what I would urge the council is really get as specific as possible in ring fencing the potential for the city to restrict or encumber a property owner taking measures that a personal property owner might need to do in order to protect their own home. And so with that in mind, I do have some specific suggestions as, you know, simple word changes that can be used to certainly allay my concerns and allay the concerns of others. Do I have the time to share those suggestions with you and the other members of the committee?
I think if you have, I think we've got like another minute or two that you can just, if you can be direct.
Okay, sure. So, you know, first of all, a legacy tree is defined as any tree in Norwalk, you know, for all intents and purposes. Doesn't specify public property, city right of way. It's any tree in Norwalk. When you get to the legacy program, its activities seem pretty benign. It's just going, the legacy program is just going to catalog and record and make available to members of the public the list of legacy trees. Nothing causing concern there at all. But when you get to section 112.10, which is entitled Tree or Shrub Replacement, the first thing I'll note is 112-10 is broadly entitled Tree or Shrub Replacement. Whereas if you go to 112-7, it's described as altering or damaging city trees, city shrubs, or required trees. No mention of legacy trees. 112-8, tree or shrub removal. Mysteriously, the caveat, the restriction to city trees, city shrubs, or required trees doesn't appear in the heading of 112-8. 112.9, similarly, protection during construction, not in the title, restricted to city trees, city shrubs, required trees. Same with 112-10, tree or shrub replacement, rather broad definition of what the section addresses. You go down to 112-10C, and it says the acceptable methods of replacement tree other than a legacy tree are. Okay, so that suggests there are specific measures to be taken if a legacy tree is removed. And indeed, you go down to 112.10D, and it says the acceptable method of replacement for a legacy tree is. Now, I would strongly suggest that the Ordinance Committee consider doing two things. First of all, in 112-8, 112-9, and 112-10 in the actual heading, specifying if it's indeed the case that these sections only refer to city trees, city shrubs, and required trees, that it be so labeled as it was with the preceding section 112-7. Furthermore, just to avoid any possible confusion, in 112-10D, I would suggest that it be reworded, the acceptable method of replacement of a city tree that has been designated a legacy tree is, just so there's no confusion and that someone couldn't read this 112-10D and think that they're empowered to impose these measures on someone that removes a legacy tree on their property, that the city in its infinite wisdom has designated a legacy tree. So those are my concerns, and that's what I would recommend to mitigate those concerns. Thank you, Lisa.
Good. Thank you very much, Lauren. Thanks for calling in with those ideas.
Okay.
Is there anybody else who'd like to raise their hand and speak? Seeing none. Anthony, you think that there's nobody else as well, right?
None that I'm seeing.
Okay, great. So I think we can close the public hearing part of our meeting. I just need to move one piece of paper so I don't lose it. So what I'd like to do is I'm just going to do a quick overall talk about what this ordinance is meaning to do, and then I'll open up the discussion for the whole committee. So obviously our tree ordinance has been discussed at length at a number of previous meetings. As you all remember, this project has been a joint project between our tree warden, Chris Torrey, other DPWs officials, including Anthony Carr and Paul Sotnick, who's here tonight, our conservation officer, Alexis Cherichetti, members of the tree advisory committee, along with, of course, our ordinance committee. And I'm just going to give a quick overview of what this tree ordinance is meaning to do. The purpose is to protect, preserve, and ensure the proper maintenance of trees and shrubs along public streets, rights of ways, park and other city properties, as well as to provide new trees and shrubs planted for the benefit of our current and future Norwalk residents. As we know, trees beautify our streets, reduce urban heat islands, improve air and water quality, mitigate stormwater, and impede soil erosion. This new ordinance fleshes out the duties more fully for both the tree warden and the tree advisory committee. The ordinance regulates how tree planting, pruning, and removal shall be accomplished in city properties and how improper removals and prunings will be mitigated. Usually these mitigations will include new tree plantings being required or payments being required to be made to the new Norwalk tree account that we'll talk more about. Other provisions will require the protection of city trees during construction and how utilities will work with the tree warden when they want to prune or remove trees below the power lines. The Norwalk tree account will be where fines and penalties for improper tree removals will be paid. This account will also be able to accept grants and donations. Funds in the Norwalk tree account can be used to fund canopy and inventory assessments, the creation of a new master tree plan, as well as to buy and install trees. And as Lawrence mentioned, we are also establishing a tree legacy program, which we can talk about in further detail. What we're really looking to do is get homeowners to voluntarily enroll their private trees that might have unique or intrinsic value because of size, age, historic association, ecologic importance, or aesthetic value. So with that, that's the general gist of what our new tree ordinance will do. And I'll just open it up for further discussion among committee members. It looks like Mr. Livingston has something to say.
Always, right?
Always.
No, thank you. No, I thought maybe I should just go over these little minor modifications, wordsmithing to the language before we look at Mr. Bittero's comments or the other comments we received. So with your permission, I'd like to propose some.
Let's do that.
Okay.
Brian, are you okay with taking notes about the changes to the ordinance so that we can kind of keep current with that?
Yeah, I'm going to try and make them as we go along so that we can, so that we have a live version by the end.
Right, so we can vote on the live version. Thank you.
And David, I'll just throw yours in there too, which is the first one, which is section 112-1, second paragraph. It says the intent of this chapter is to maintain and grow the Norwalk's urban forest. Delete the word the.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on to page 3, and I said some of these are nits. And the definition of streetscape tree, the second line, delete the comma after right of way.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. Third, next comment is on page, I'm sorry, it's page 4, but and I don't know if you're going to get this type of thing when you submit it, but in section 112-3 I, needs to be a space between city tree and city shrub.
Under
Maybe.
removal of a city tree, comma, city shrub or required tree?
Yeah, it needs a space there.
Okay.
112-4, fourth line from the bottom, it says replacement shall be appointed to complete such term, then add the words in the manner prescribed in this section. In the manner prescribed in this section. What that does, this language says if somebody leaves the office, there'll be an appointment. And all I'm saying here is they'll be appointed in the same way they were appointed originally, which is the mayor and the council. All right, moving on to page, oh wait, page 10 in section 112-12-5. Remove the words to be at the end of that first line. So it says replacement determined at discretion. I would make replacement determined at the discretion of the tree warden. Okay.
Adding the word "the."
Yeah, deleting the word to be, adding the word be.
Yes.
And then going to 112-14. The third line, it says emergency basis because the tree, add the word or shrub, that's capital S shrub, and continue on as a hazardous tree or hazardous shrub. And then finally, 112-15, second to last line. It says warden's decision, delete the comma. Going on, may appeal, add the words such decision within 10 days. So it reads, any person aggrieved by the tree warden's decision may appeal such decision within 10 days. Blah, blah, and continue on. And those are my comments on the specific rules.
You have all of those?
Got 'em.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's turn our attention to Peter's comments first. Peter, we might consult with you on the words because where are we?
I can't find the comment on the Zoom, so that's why I didn't put it in.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
I can send you an email and we can consult with me. I think you understand. It's just
Yeah,
to broaden the
and
definition.
we have to, if we're going to make the change tonight, Peter, and we're going to vote on it to send it to common council, we have to get the words in now. So we have to vote on the finished product tonight. So.
Peter, do you have the words in front of you?
I'll type them up and send them, and read them to you in 2 minutes.
Okay, that'd be great. If you could send it to Brian and then we can talk about that in a minute. All right, so let's turn our attentions to the legacy tree program question. So it seems as though what Lawrence would like to suggest is that we consider, now I'm like looking for my tree.
Oh, Lisa, before we go on any further,
Yes,
in 112-1, the first paragraph after wildlife, it's the last word of the first paragraph. There was no period, so I just put in a period.
thank you. That's a good catch. Okay, so Dominique, do you have Lawrence's comments specifically that you said that you might have his comments to share?
I believe the two changes he was suggesting, I hope I took notes correctly just now. I believe I do. It says that sections 8 through 10 should be labeled as section 7, i.e. they only apply to city and required shrubs and trees. I believe that's the first. Should I mention the second, or we talk about that one?
I think for one, I think what he wants to do is, I think it's okay for 7, but I think in 8, he wants to say city tree or city shrub removal.
Right, like to model 8 through 10 off of 7 was what I heard from him.
Which is, does anybody have any thoughts about why that might not work?
I looked at that before. I don't think it's necessary, but I don't object. I mean, it's because the heading is not the ordinance, right?
Yeah,
The language is the ordinance. So the heading's not going to dictate what the ordinance says. But if you want to make the changes, I don't think it, and we'd have to change 112-8 would have to say city tree, city shrub, or required tree removal. or I would actually rephrase it, removal of city tree. But I don't think it has any legal significance, but if you want to make it.
I mean, I don't feel strongly about it. I mean, I think that we use the words, we define what we're talking about throughout there pretty accurately.
Now, if, just to clarify, like legally, as I read this now in the substance of the ordinance, none of that covers legacy trees, to his point. It's just the heading.
Yeah, so the heading doesn't have any, I mean, it's just
Okay,
yeah, it doesn't have any
Okay.
meaning. I mean, it's just really like it's a scrolling, where you find what you're looking for with the heading.
okay.
But-
And there's no mention of legacy tree in 112-8. That is correct.
Right, okay. Then, yeah, I mean, if it's a matter of then just helping the public understand that the legacy tree is not listed, I can see the argument for that. But to your point, Tom, it's not.
Go into the body of it, it's never mentioned.
Right. So if we're kind of on the fence about it, I'd be fine changing it to his suggestion as well, if that, unless people feel strongly against it, but I guess that's, yeah.
I'm fine, like if it makes them happy, it has no pertinence, real.
Okay.
So
So to
Lisa, just so we're clear, in 112-8, the title will now read removal of city tree, city shrub, or required tree.
Yes, please.
And then, hold on one second. And then 112-9 just says protection during construction. It doesn't say anything else. Are we making a change to 112, the title to 112-9?
I don't think it needs to be done.
Okay.
Right.
112-10 will now read, if everyone agrees, replacement of city tree, city shrub, or required tree.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Well,
Those are the changes that I
I
have.
don't think, no, I don't think that works.
Okay.
Because a legacy tree
Under D.
is not a city tree.
Right.
So you'd have to say, or city or legacy tree. And if you're doing all that, you might as well just leave it as tree or shrub replacement.
Yeah, just leave it. I think we should just leave it. And then when we go to D, the question is, we'll say the acceptable method of replacement for a city legacy tree, but a city,
That doesn't work.
yeah. So the question, what I think he's suggesting is that if you have a legacy tree on your property, what happens? Like, we don't really talk about the removal of the tree in other sections, but here we say how you have to replace it. So when does this occur that a legacy tree would be removed?
I just want to make sure that I had an issue trying to clear this up. 112-10, you just want tree or shrub replacement?
Yes.
Keep it as is? Okay. Where are we now? I'm sorry.
Now we're at 112-10D, which says the acceptable method for replacement for a legacy tree is replacement of a
Okay.
legacy tree with whatever it is. But we never talk about a removal of a legacy tree. Is that the issue, Dominique? You've got your hand up, Dominique.
Oh. Yeah, thank you. I think that is what I understand to be the issue, is like making the language a bit more specific to what would happen with a legacy tree on private property.
So I think that, well, let's just talk about legacy trees for a minute. I think that
Okay.
the idea of the legacy tree was that people were going to voluntarily enroll their legacy trees into this program. And if it's a hazardous legacy tree, which could happen, right? Like it could become hazardous over time. One can get a permit to remove a hazardous tree by going to the tree warden. But if you remove it without a permit, then you have a problem. Is that kind of, Tom, that's pretty much how we thought about it, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking this through. So where are the prohibitions on doing anything to a legacy tree that this would kick in? I was about to do a search of the document online.
I don't think we talk about taking down legacy trees.
So then it's a fair question. When does this apply?
Exactly.
Hold on one second. I'll do a quick search for
Yeah.
legacy.
I also, Lisa, just looking at Hartford to see what they had done. same thing.
So are we talking about legacy tree removal? Is that what we're talking about?
Well,
Yes,
when would this provision kick in, right? I mean, when would you have to replace a legacy tree?
I mean, maybe the thing to do is to delete it entirely, because at this time, we're not really punishing people for removing legacy trees. We're trying to encourage people to enroll them into the program. And, if they were to take, I take his point that if there's a legacy tree that the city's identified on city property, one second, David, I'm going to get to you in one second, but just to make this point, if there's a legacy tree on city property and somebody removes it without going through the warden, then this should be the appropriate. Then we could do what Lawrence says, which is call it a city legacy tree.
Maybe that is maybe we should do that, yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be the answer. David, do you have a comment on that line and this line of thinking?
No, that you made my point. I think we need to distinguish between what's a private legacy tree that someone voluntarily enters into this program so that we can keep track of it, and what's a city legacy tree, which if for some reason it gets removed, it triggers this provision.
Yeah. So maybe what we should say is the acceptable method for replacement for a legacy tree on city
Well,
property.
no, I think that
Have a special definition for
the
city.
suggested language was city tree that has been designated a legacy tree is what he offered.
Yeah, I think that would work. Right?
Lisa, excuse me, I have a question.
Yes,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
I'm gonna make this a little more complicated. What if someone designates a tree on their property as a legacy tree and then sells their property? And the person that buys the property has a different point of view. I mean,
Well, we're not telling them that they can't do anything. It's just been that it's been recognized by the TAC, by the Tree Advisory Committee, that's a legacy tree, but we're not telling them that they can't take it down.
okay, all right.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do right now is under D, say the acceptable method for replacement for a legacy tree that's on a city property. So it would not be private property. We're not regulating legacy trees on private property. So, Tom, did you pick up the language that he wrote that, because I missed, yeah.
Yes, he said acceptable method of replacement for a city tree, defined term, that has been designated a legacy tree.
That's what
Yeah.
I think we should say.
Yeah, let's take his word.
Everybody kind of get that?
All right, so I
So-
have the acceptable method of replacement for a city tree that has been designated as a legacy tree is, and then we have D1 and D2.
Yes, I think that works. Because we're not regulating what people can and cannot do on their private property.
Right, because that's why the comment was correct, that we're saying a city tree that has been designated a legacy tree, not a private tree.
Exactly. That fixes it. Great catch by Lawrence.
Yep,
So
thank you.
and then did you get the language you needed from Peter?
Yeah, let me read. I just got the email. Let me read what we, hold on. Yes, Peter, I got it. So the comment from Peter is, and this will be attached to the minutes at our next meeting, Peter's email. Tree severely that is not likely to survive. And then it looks like a greater than or less than sign.
Brian, what
Okay.
section are you in?
I don't know. What section am I in, Peter?
I think he's in the pruning section.
D,
112.7D.
112.7D.
7D. Thank you. All
And
right,
that's an ad. The emphasis is ad.
thank you.
We can't do plus or minus in this in the ordinance, so we're gonna have to do something with that language. So wait,
Okay. Tree that is not a tree severely that is not likely to survive. Add also that I got to minimize this so I can compare the two of them. Hold on one second.
What your intent is.
All right, so this looks like it's on it starts, notwithstanding the foregoing, if the tree warden determines in his or her or their sole and absolute judgment that any person has pruned, altered, or damaged a city tree, city shrub, or required tree so severely that it is not likely to survive. And then Peter's recommended language is add that a tree has been altered such that it is not able to grow, that it shall not be able to grow to its natural form and habit, or that the tree does not reach its purpose for which it was interned in the location in which it is planted. That person, and then intended, sorry, that person shall replace. So I think it has to go, is not likely to survive. So in between survive and the comma.
Okay, I gotcha. The only question, and Peter, I don't know that, I mean, we were taking, we're having public comments, so like we're sort of out of the way we really should be doing this. But the trick with what you've added is that I don't know if this is something Chris can identify in the wild. What he's saying, like, can you really say, oh, the habit of the tree isn't what it's supposed to be? I feel like we're putting ourselves into a place where we're, it's not discernible by the tree warden, and that this is something that really probably shouldn't be added here. It probably goes into maintenance and a tree management plan, but I'm not sure that it's appropriate in the ordinance. But other lawyers and other council people, if you'd like to speak about that, I'm afraid and Chris, you too, not that I understand what Peter's trying to accomplish, but I'm not sure that it's something that can be ordained in an ordinance.
It's intended to stop topping the trees.
Well, we've got
I figured that that's where you were going, Peter, and that is not subjective, but how a tree grows, the shape of the tree is subjective, right? I mean, we know a maple tree, what it's supposed to look like, but they don't all look like that, especially when the power company goes through. So I don't think that we should get too much into the weeds about trying to identify the shape of a tree, right? But I do agree with Peter that topping is a problem, and unfortunately, it's too late afterwards other than a fine, but the tree has already been distressed.
But doesn't our language that we have there already, any person has pruned, altered is the word that I think is going to cover this, or damaged a city tree, blah, 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 so severely it's not likely to survive. Doesn't altered pick up what the intent of what Peter's language is?
It will survive, unaltered.
How long will it survive?
100 years. I mean, they can continue to, it will be
They are
altered.
resilient.
What was the language again, can I ask? Brian, can I have the language again? Survive or what?
Right, hold on, I was looking up, I was going up to the definition, so I gotta go back.
Would you like me to read it? I can read it.
Maybe
Go ahead, Peter.
Maybe that would go in the altered definition?
Go ahead, Peter.
So also that a tree that has been altered such that it shall not be able to grow to its natural form and habit, or that the tree does not reach its purpose for which it was intended in the location in which it was planted, AKA street tree is intended to grow to shade a tree. If it's severely pruned, it will not shade the streets. You will not achieve what your carbon sequestration, you won't heat reduction, but the tree will survive.
Well, what about this? Let's go back to the definition of alter, because I feel like that's gonna, I think we're clouding that section of the ordinance.
Perhaps.
Alter means to take any action by removing branches or by filling, surfacing, grading, compacting, channeling, or changing the drainage pattern of the soil surrounding any tree or shrub in a manner that threatens to diminish the vigor of the tree or shrub. The term alter does not include normal seasonal pruning. So could we say topping, like if that's what you're trying to accomplish by saying we can't top, is that the best place to put it in?
The alter might be fine.
Just add topping there?
Topping is kind of a nebulous term. It doesn't, what does topping mean?
But Peter, for those that don't know, topping was a practice that was in the ANSI standards 50 years ago. It's just not anymore.
We need to get something in there. So how we say it.
I like the altered because that's altered is altered. Topping is altered, no?
It picks it up. I think it picks it up without muddying the water. David, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think we have to be careful that we become so specific that we box ourselves in. So there's two sides of this. There's we got to think about legislative intent. And, that we're able to give the tree warden the ability to make a subjective decision about something that needs to be fined, replaced, all of these things. If we box this in too much, then we lose the ability to do that because we have to fit these parameters. So I'd prefer to see it in the definition of alter that gives us that broader look at the tree.
Yeah, Tom.
Doesn't the earlier subsections of 112-7 handle this? I mean, it says that no person shall alter or damage a city tree, city shrub, or required tree, and no person shall prune a city tree, city shrub, or required tree without a permit from the tree warden. So I obviously, I don't know if altering or pruning would cover topping without, so with a permit, I was assuming you would have to explain what to the tree warden, what you plan on doing to that city tree or required tree.
But this is covering an instance where they didn't get the permit, I think. See, it's under the violation of this section, right?
Right, so it says no person shall do that. I mean, you can't.
Right, but they're not allowed to do it, but if they do, and he determines that it's really damaged the tree, then they have to replace it. But let me go back to something, because I have a trouble with intended purpose of a tree, because I think that is incredibly subjective. But I can see, or if it's damaged so it won't grow to its natural form, and I'm going to defer to Chris on this, whether that's something that we could do, because if it damaged so severely that it's not likely to survive or grow to its normal form, natural form, is that workable?
The word survive is what limits it, and David's word is boxing it, because if it doesn't survive, Chris has to replace it, but it will survive. So if it's altered to a point where it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, Chris doesn't have the
No, but this has an or. It won't survive or grow to its natural form. I mean, so it's.
Can
it's
I
an
just
or.
clarify something? I think what Peter's trying to say is that we're planting these trees to grow the canopy. And if people are improperly pruning them, it's detracting from them being part of the overall Norwalk canopy, I think. Peter, is that correct?
Yes.
So I think that's what he means by purpose of the tree, that it was planted as a canopy tree. And if we continue to lop them off, they're not going to function as a canopy tree.
But they will survive.
Even though they'll survive, yeah.
But who's going to write down are you guys going to write down the purpose of every tree that's planted and keep a record of it? I just don't think it's workable.
Yeah.
I appreciate the concern. I just don't know that's workable.
I think it's going to be too much in the field making decisions about things. I feel like we should leave it with alter, and then Chris's job is, to determine, has a tree been altered? David, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, I'm saying the same thing. I think we keep it in a place where those decisions can be made in the field.
Right. And then I think that the comments that Peter and Erica are making really ought to be put in the tree management. And then that's the advisory document that Chris would review when he's thinking about whether or not a tree has been altered or damaged. And that language would definitely go in there.
So just to jump in real quick.
We're taking it out.
And right. And we'll get to that in a second. I realize the concern. And I know that this could probably go into the management plan. So part of it is, I understand that some people might try to do this to a city tree without getting a permit. But for those that went and got the permit and did what they were not supposed to do, the tree warden can deny them a permit the next time. So it's like a bad actor kind of thing. Obviously there's the people that are not going to ask for the permit and just going to do what they're going to do. And so maybe that can be in the management document as well to some extent. But I'm just pointing out that there are a lot of protections within this section, and I don't think it's going to be perfect, but I'm not sure we can make it perfect.
Just don't want to limit Chris's ability to fix it.
Right. Yeah.
I have to tell you, I'm thinking if it's something Chris could determine, I don't see why we don't put in or survive or grow to its natural form. Because if that's something that you can determine, Chris, it's not really covered elsewhere. And that would cover when we drive up the roads, we see what Eversource has done to carve out the middle of the trees. That's not necessarily covered. And I think that's it's not that big a change to the language.
The work that Eversource would do was outlined in their permit process. So that's not really a big concern about Eversource hacking up trees anymore. But we've done very well about keeping them in check and telling them to take the tree down completely if they're going to over prune it, and replant. But as for filing permits, you're talking about less than a handful of times a year that residents apply for a permit to take a tree down. Most of the time, unfortunately, it's illegal, which this strength, it covers, tenfold. Whereas opposed, the other one was a little bit vague and ambiguous.
So what if a tree has, multiple branches and they cut, they say there's 10 major branches. I'm not an arborist, and they knock down 9 of them. The tree's still alive, but it's
severely altered. I think it falls into the altered category.
well, so altered so severely that it's not likely to survive. But it is going to survive. That's Mr. Vittorio's point.
Will it survive with 9 of the 10? I mean,
Well,
It'll
well,
survive.
whatever, maybe it's 8, whatever it is. I mean, 2. That's the point. It could still survive. I'm not an arborist, and I don't know how this is.
It's also intended for the commercial property owners who are pruning city trees, so you can see signage. So the tree will survive. The natural form has been altered very purposely, so you can see the sign of the stores behind you, even though it's on city property. That's really the target person. I mean, that's one of the targets of this. Why I think it's important to include it.
So is this something you can, I mean, we always come down to the place where, is this something that you can enforce? Are these words that we're putting into the statute something you can enforce? If it is, it should go in. If it's nebulous.
Yes,
it's
advisors.
enforceable.
But again, I just have to ask the question, is it better to put it into the definition of alter so that it sweeps a broader class, so to speak, than to just make it specific in here? So we put it in the alter, then it stays into the subjectivity of what the tree warden is able to do in that definition.
And I prefer it in the definition too. Dominique, you've had your hand up for a little while.
No, it's all good. David and you were thinking, right, what I was thinking, do we put it in alter, or is it more appropriate to go into the definition of damage?
Well, honestly, anytime you
doesn't
prune a
work.
tree, it's damaging.
Doesn't
the tree.
work?
It doesn't work.
Okay.
Because here's the problem, alter already is there, but this language provides alter so severely. So you could put it there, but it still has to get so severely that it won't survive. So that doesn't solve the problem. This is the way I'm looking at it.
Shouldn't it just say alter? Like, honestly, altering covers it, because if you prune it illegally, that's altering it. If you prune it and you're doing the right thing, that's altering it, and it's not your place to do it. So that's what we're trying to stop, right? We're trying to stop the Avalons from pruning the trees that we just planted 2 years ago.
Let me try this again. So this language, if you violate the section, you're fine, right? But if you violate it, you don't necessarily have to replace it, right? You only have to replace it if it's determined by the tree warden that it is so damaged, so altered, that it is not likely to survive. So you can put all you want, alter, but that doesn't make it change the criteria, which isn't supposed to survive. So that's why it has to be.
Do they replace it or do they pay the fine, right? Like, that's what we're really doing.
Right, that's what we're talking about. They have to replace it if it's this. Normally it's a fine, but if they damage it so severely or alter it so severely it won't survive, then they have to replace it. And that's what Mr.
But
Vittorino
aren't we inviting lawsuits where somebody's like, well, where's this line? Is it really altered so severely it won't live?
Well,
wait, it's living. So
this actually gives them a little easier for Chris. And by the way, it's in his sole and absolute judgment for that purpose. But whether or not it survives, I'm not an arborist. I'll keep that going. It might be easier to say it won't grow to its natural form than it's not to be able to survive. Chris, you know better than I. But I do think changing the definition of alter doesn't solve the problem. So I would suggest adding after the word survive, because I'm not comfortable with intended purpose stuff, because I don't, that's too vague to me, but it is not likely to survive or grow to its natural form. I mean, you can tinker with the words, but I get the point.
I'll take half a comment.
Chris, can you live with to grow to its natural form? Can you?
But what is that? You can put 2 trees next to each other, the same trees, and they grow up to be without being altered at all, and they look different. So what's like, I like the altered. I don't understand where we're going with we're getting too specific, like Councilman Huberman said, is I think that we're boxing ourselves into specificity. Sorry. We're being too specific. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
It's going the other way. It's giving another criteria for replacement, right? It's adding another example of where you'd have to get to replace it. Either it's so severely damaged it won't survive, or you've changed the look, essentially.
But we don't know what the change of the look is. I think we're adding nebulous to it. I think we're making Chris's job harder. I think that the truth of the matter is that we know it when it's not going to survive, and the rest we have to find, because otherwise we're putting ourselves in a position of lawsuits between people saying, it was always going to look this weird because the sun's on this side, it grows on that side, and I just think it's nebulous.
We're getting into a conversation about whether a tree is going to live or die. Like, honestly, we should be trying to discourage any resident from pruning any city tree on their own. Like, that's the intent of this, is to stop the practice altogether, not say, hey, you took this limb off and you raised the canopy so people could walk onto the sidewalk. Well, thank you, but we would prefer to do that. You need to be a licensed arborist in the city to do that.
Yes.
I think that's what we're trying to do.
I think we're adding too much uncertainty into the ordinance by adding that language.
And Lisa,
Yes, Paul?
I just want to mention one thing too, that to Chris's point right now, with the Eversource pruning, and it's something that came up many years ago too, when they were going through cutting the V notches through the trees, they so severely damaged the tree that Chris and we'd make them at that point when they took more than a third of the tree down. We made them remove it because it was going to die and we would have to do it. Same kind of thing. If it's what Chris is just talking about, where it's a little vague, or Councilman Huberman is talking about, where it gives you some room, Chris can make that decision in the field on a case-by-case basis.
I think it's best to keep it cleaner. Do we need to vote on this language, or can people live with it? Is everybody okay with leaving it the way that it is? Okay. I think that it's just adding a layer of complexity and confusion, and it's not something easily definable.
We're leaving 112.7D as is, no changes.
Yes.
And one other question on that too, Brian, related to 112.7D. If you go back to 112.7B, it talked about a fee established in accordance with Chapter 90-4 approval of rates and fees. And we go down to 112.7D, and it was the $250, which I know is the maximum you can find in the state of Connecticut at this point in time.
Right.
Is that intended to be left as 250, or should that go to the fee schedule also?
No, the 250 is for somebody who violates the provision. The fee schedule, I believe, goes to somebody who's applying for a written permit to prune a city tree.
Yeah.
But there are fines. I believe there are fines in the schedule already.
Well,
The
the fine in the schedule, as it pertains to a violation of 112-7, would have to be changed to $250, and the fee for applying for the permit to prune a city tree will be whatever the rate and fee is as established by whatever committee it is or department.
And my only point was, should that be 90-4 also, and define it in the fee schedule so that the state ever changes the maximum? You don't have to go back and change the ordinance again, because it used to be $99.
I think we can leave it right now for the time being. We want to give people some certainty about what it is, and we can change it if it changes.
Right.
We'll know, because we want to punish. Let's leave it the way it is for the time being.
I mean, with consistency, I think, the ordinances that we've done over the years, we've consistently put in the fine amount so that somebody can't feign ignorance and say, well, there's multiple documents that I have to go to find this. We can put the fine amount in your fee schedule along with whatever the fee is for the permit. So showing what somebody has to do to apply for a permit, and then also what the violation is. And then And then we also have it in here so that somebody who's looking to follow the rules will know what the penalty is if you don't follow the rules.
It makes sense. It's a lot easier to see it in one spot.
Okay, so I think we're ready to go to the committee now and see if all of these changes that we've made, are there any other comments by committee members, other changes that they're concerned about? And then we can take a vote on the ordinance as amended. Anybody else with other comments on the committee? David, good. Dominique, you're good. Kadeem, good. Thumbs up. Tom, other comments or questions?
No, I just want to, thank you for your leadership on this, and thank Chris, Anthony, and Paul for all your support along the way. I think we've come a long way. I think this is a tremendous improvement over our existing ordinance, and I think it really shows how important we as a council view trees for the city, and I think it's a great sign. So thank you.
Good. And Mr. Keegan, I didn't ask you, or do you have a question or comment that you want to make? And then I'm going to go to Chris Torrey.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
You're good? Okay. Chris, it's been a long road, buddy.
It's been worth it. I've enjoyed the ride. I've learned a lot of stuff. So thank you for taking the lead and the support. I mean, it's invaluable, and the city's moving in a good direction, and I want to keep the momentum going. So thank you all for letting me be a part of the process.
Well,
So Lisa, let me just go through all the changes again one more time so everyone knows what they're voting on. 112-1, first paragraph, period, at the end of the first paragraph after wildlife. In the second paragraph of 112-1, we're removing grow and we're moving the, so it's grow Norwalk's urban forest.
Yes.
And then I'll just scroll down and get to the next change. In streetscape, we're removing the comma after the right of way.
Yes.
That's streetscape tree. That's in one of the definitions. At the bottom of page, well, it's in 112-4A. It's after term, it's about fourth line up. Complete such term in the manner prescribed in this section. So in the manner prescribed in this section is the change.
Hey, Brian, there was
Yep.
an added space in 112-3I. I don't know if you need, it's not a change in the substance, so, but I'll make sure you got it.
Got it. Yep, I got that. Sorry, I missed that
Okay.
one.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's see. 112-8 title, removal of city tree, city shrub, or required tree. And then 112-10, there was no change, but there's a red line because I made the change. So it's back to the original tree or shrub replacement. So there's no change there. And then in 112-7D, after it says the acceptable method of replacement for and the new language is city tree that has been designated as and then the old language legacy tree is. So it's city tree that has been designated as is the new language there.
Yes.
And then see if there's anything else.
Yes, they're under public utilities.
Yeah. There's get rid of 2B and it's at the discretion of the tree warden. So get rid of 2B and the is new. And that is in 112-12A5.
Yes.
And
You have on 14 and 15, you have
And
changes.
there's still things left, yeah.
third line of 112-14 or shrub is added after tree. So tree or shrub is the new language.
Yes.
And then 112-15, second line up, get rid of the comma after decision. And then new language is such decision, which is sandwiched between may appeal and within. So may appeal such decision within. So those are the changes.
Those are all the changes I had noted. Anything was missed by anybody that you want to comment? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion on the floor to vote to take chapter 112 as amended to the common council for vote. Thank you, David. All in favor?
Aye.
It passes unanimously. That is terrific. Thanks, everybody, for all this effort. I mean, this was a big lift, so thank you. We appreciate everybody's help. Chris, thank you so much. Thank you to all of the people who contributed, including this committee. We worked really hard on this. Thanks, everybody. The next order of business is, I don't know if we have anybody hearing for just public comment in general. Anthony, is there anybody sitting wanting to raise their hand for public comment?
Presently speaking, no one.
Okay, gotcha. All
So I
right.
just want to make sure you guys voted, I just want to make sure I have the record correct. You guys voted to send the tree ordinance as amended to the common council for vote.
Exactly.
Okay.
Brian, do we need to say at the next next council meeting?
I would say just for completeness sake, I would just say at the next council meeting, which is October 27th.
Yeah.
26th, I'm sorry, 26th.
Whatever the date is, yeah.
Tuesday, October 26th. Yeah, I would just add that in.
Okay. Can you, that would be great. So let's amend the record to reflect that.
Right.
Terrific. Okay, the last order of business today, well, actually the second to last order of business is the acceptance of the minutes from our September 21st, 2021 regular meeting of the Ordinance Committee. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes? Mr. Livingston. Does anybody have any changes to the draft minutes? Mr. Hoovelman.
Madam Chair.
We're so sorry about the minutes
Okay,
change
sorry.
we have to make on your behalf.
Page, let's hold on a second. Attendance got it right. Okay. Page 3. This would be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th paragraph down where it starts, Mr. Huvelman. Can we alter the spelling of my name to Heuvelman?
We can do
Hold on
that.
one second, David.
Yep.
How often did it happen, Mr. Hoovelman?
Got it.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right.
Sorry.
Where's the next one, David?
Page 5. 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph down. It's right at the beginning. Heuvelman.
Got it?
Got
Brian,
it?
why don't you do a global fix?
Yeah, let's just do a board. Exactly.
Then if you go down to the bottom of that page, Brian, in the last paragraph, it's twice in there. It's the first, in the first line, first sentence and the third sentence. And then on the following page, page 6, it's the first paragraph.
Mr. Heuvelman asked what the difference is.
Yep.
Got it. All right, I got them all.
Alrighty, so there is a motion on the table to accept the minutes as amended for the proper spelling of our colleague's name. All in favor? Accepting the minutes? That's great. So that passed unanimously. And then the last piece of business I have really is to thank Mr. Roberts for being such a great committee member. This is our last ordinance committee before our next election. And I was hoping Manny was going to be here too, and that we could thank you very much for your service. We know you're going to go on to do great things for Norwalk. We know you'll be back in some shape or form doing your work for Norwalk. So anyway, we've enjoyed having you with us. And we're sorry that Mr. Langella's not here to hear us say that we enjoyed having him as well, but it's been fun.
Kadeem, Manny and Kadeem, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Miss you guys.
Yeah, so thank you for being here. So I'll entertain one final motion. Oh, come on, you guys, this is the one. Keegan, this is the one I always try to win for common council.
Let
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Kadeem get the
Yes,
motion.
Kadeem, you do it.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor. All right, thanks, everybody. I think
Good night.
we really appreciate all the help. It was a good discussion.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
call on that one, Brian. Very good call.
Very good call. Final order.